לב טהור, ברא לי אלוהים, ורוח נכון, חדש בקרבי. I am Father Agapetos. Learn how Jesus prayed the Psalms.
Dwelling you water, the hills are tasted fill of your gift.
Good evening. We are again together, continuing our study of the Psalms and of the second book of the Psalter. And last week, we saw the central psalm of the first group in the second book of the Psalter, Psalm 47. And tonight we're going to have the next psalm. But this was the occasion for me to go through all these first psalms of books 2, and so that we together start catching about a little bit the dynamic. So let us look at a little scheme where I have, starting with Psalm 42, 43, this going upward towards Psalm 47. So my translation starts, as a deer cries for channels of running waters. And what's happening during this psalm? Let me read. Suffering and exile, where I am the prey of pressing hostility and away from temple intimacy with God. I think it's a very rich psalm that expresses the suffering of being exiled, right? With the danger of it, and the missing intimacy with God. Second psalm, Psalm 44, which starts earlier, with our ears we have heard, basically we've heard your marvels. So Psalm 44 is suffering, a second suffering from the loss of our beloved God's intimate care of the past, and bringing us victory over our enemies. And what did I write? And settling us in the promised land. God did wonders in the past and it seems lost. And that's so present to our spiritual lives, right? Oh yeah, God did wonders, but right now I don't see. Where is he with those wonders? And I'm suffering from the loss of them. Third psalm. Third psalm is the great Psalm 45. My heart overflows with a good word about the most beautiful of the sons of men and his pre-bride queen. What is this saying? And behind the suffering, there's a preparation of a wonderful gift, a wonderful double gift, both of the Messiah and his companion, his queen companion. So I wrote this title, this explanation. The bridegroom king shines of God's beauty and finds his complement in the bride queen, who leads all to full temple worship. So we have this extraordinary, what is lacking so much in the first Psalms is given on a silver platter in Psalm 45. Psalm 46, which sort of pairs with tonight's psalm, and which starts, Oelim for us, O shelter and strength. I wrote, because you're with us, you are shelter and strength. We have no fear, but rather we fall in worship before God's transforming power, and which is explained, applied to both life-promoting and life-lacking facets of creatures. Two different forms of transformation, powerful transformation of God, and but that we entrust to God. That's again so true about interior life. Right? There's the wonderful flowers of spiritual life, which are a transformation, a progress in our life. But there's also the difficult trials that God puts, like earthquakes, in the midst of this blossoming of flowers. And all that is, we trust that it's God's transforming power at work. And then last time, this all leads up to the fact that all peoples clasp hands to Zion, to the holy people. And I wrote a call to all peoples proclaiming the universal election of all God's diligent children who recognize God's privileged elect. And so here we are at last week with the gift that we recognize of God's Messiah and Queen, of God's powerful transforming work, is one which endows us with a mission, a universal mission. And we are the privileged ones for this mission. And all peoples are to recognize this way of doing of God. And so this we come to our Psalm 48. I haven't yet found an appropriate title, because the best is to go to the psalm itself, and already the superscription of the psalm is going to be a first indication of the new gifts which are given to us. Okay, so we're going to listen to hear. We're going to listen to the Hebrew of the superscription.
שיר מזמור לבני קורח.
Okay. Shir Mismor Livnei Korak. So, Mismor Livnei Korak, we found it in the previous psalm. And, but here we have together Shir Mismor. And I translated a psalm. It's a doubly singing gift which we have tonight. So that after recognizing in the central Psalm 47 last week that we have a universal mission, right? We are celebrating with a doubly singing. And what are we doubly singing? We're going to see it. We're doubly singing the privileged gifts that God has given to his holy city, to Jerusalem. And we're going to spell them out in 5 different parts. So let us go, each part has a color, and in the color, we're going to look, for example, here, the red color, verse 2 to verse 4, and basically almost all of verse 2 is sort of an introduction, then there's a central part, and a conclusion in verse 4. And so let's listen to the 3 parts of this first part of Psalm 48, and I gave his title for this first part, Our Marvel at God's Lavishing Zion with His Gifts of Inhabitation. God lavishing Zion with His gifts of inhabitation. So it starts this way.
גדול אדוני ומהולל מאוד, בעיר אלוהינו, הר קודשו.
Great is, it should be Gadol Hashem. Great is the God of salvation. To be admired excessively, meod. We've had it excessively, we had it already at the very end of the last psalm. And to be admired excessively in the city of our Eloheinu, in the city of our God. So this is a remarkable start. He's great, our God, our Savior. And joined to that is his manifestation in the city, in his city, in the city of our Elohim. So great is God, and including in his manifestation to the holy city, which starts with the city of our Elohim. And this city of our Elohim receives a fivefold name. Let's listen to the fivefold name of the city of God.
יפה נוף, משוש כל הארץ. הר ציון ירכתי צפון, קריית מלך רב.
The first is Mount of Holiness, which should be, it should be started. It's an error to put first three. So it's a Mount of Holiness. With everything, the idea of Mount, we think of Mount Sinai, but Jerusalem is a Mount of Holiness. And second is Yefe Nof, a beautiful treetop. That's the little sense that I regret that most translations change this around. But Jerusalem is a beautiful treetop, because behind treetop means that it's a living, organic, growing reality that is, with its growth as a cedar, becomes more and more beautiful. It goes up. And then I put in bold the third name, source of joy for all the earth. It's difficult. I'm hesitating about the translation. It could be extra joy for all the earth. There's something very special about the joy for all the earth which Jerusalem gives. And that's the heart of the names given to the city of God. And I could say until today, I who lived near Jerusalem for about 10 years, source of joy for all the earth, that's really what we think when we think of Jerusalem. And we see the Jewish and Christian pilgrims assembling there. Next, Mount Zion. So it's the second Mount of Holiness, and Mount Zion. Zion is the chosen, the chosen mount, right? The one which is a signal all around. And then there's this wonderful name, Yarkete, sorry, it's Yarkete Safon, inner alcoves of the north. So what does that mean? And first, inner alcoves is something it's only present one other time in the Psalms, and that's in Psalm 128. We have there, your wife will be a fruitful vine within Yirket, your house, in the inner recesses of your house. Your wife is a treasure. But here it's not your house, it's of the north. What does the north mean? So we could think of the geographical north, and that's what we have, for example, in Psalm 89. North and south, you have created them. But when we look, for example, at the book of the prophet Ezekiel, at the beginning of his book, he speaks about the north. And what does he say? Let me read. The stormy wind came out of the north, and from the midst, the likeness of four living creatures. The north is the place from which come out, right, God's most mysterious manifestations, creatures. And this has produced a whole tradition about the north, which, for example, in one of the early Christian writings of Enoch, says, the North Mountain is where the tree of life is. Precisely. The mystery of God is hidden in the north. And so here, Jerusalem participates in this mysterious north is, in a certain sense, far away presence. But Jerusalem is this central presence in which the tree of life is given, in which the mystery of the living creatures that speak about God's mystery is given. So, inner alcoves of the north, it's really worth meditating on this fourth name given to the city of God. And then it goes with a fifth name, which we heard, Kiryat Melech Rav, the town of the great king. So usually Kiryat is the towns of the Philistines in Holy Land, right? But precisely what it means, it's one in which the great king walks around freely, and whereas he's at home, right? It's a hometown. Maybe that's the way I should have translated it, for the great king. 5 beautiful names, which followed what was at the very beginning. Great is God, and to be excessively admired in the city of our Elohim. In the city of our Elohim. And then there's 2 additional attributes of the city. Let's listen to them.
אלוהים בארמנותיה נודע למשגב.
God in her fortress palaces, known as defensive tower. So, God is in the city, and in the city, in a special way, he's in the fortress palaces. What does that mean? Well, he's he's where the glamour of palaces is, but he's where also the defensive power and against the adversaries of all sorts, which we have been hearing since the beginning of the second book of the Psalm, where we are defended. And then after this defense, he says, known as defensive power, right? And so we really recognize that Jerusalem is our protection, with 5 beautiful names. And if we think of the progression of the Psalms we've had, we had such beautiful descriptions of the bridegroom, Messiah, and the queen. And Jerusalem is also endowed with beautiful descriptions. There are 3 great beauties in this second book of the Psalm. The bridegroom Messiah, his companion, the queen, and the third, the city of God. 3rd great beauty. So that's the introduction to our psalm, the first part. Zion, which we saw in Psalm 47, which is going to attract all peoples, right, is a special beauty among all beauties. Then we get to the second part of the psalm. And again, in the second part, which is in blue, right, we have 3 groups, right? And I put in the middle what is the center. And so let's listen to the beginning of the central part, which I gave as title, 2, Universal Attraction to Zion provokes for the converts mixed torments and joys. Here we have, after looking at the beauty of Zion, we have her powerful mission at work and how it's at work. And this mixed torments and joys reminds us very much of our Psalm 46, where we had the life-giving facets and the lifeless facets that are treated differently by God. And so let's listen to the first part, verse 5 and the beginning of verse 6.
הנה המלכים נועדו, עברו יחדיו, המה ראו.
Okay. True. So it's ki hine, truly behold. There is, it's in this, right. Be, right. In our liturgy, we say, wisdom be attentive. That's probably what a translation for wisdom be attentive, right? The kings gather, pass together, they do themselves see. There's kings represent already in Psalm 2 at the very beginning of the Psalter, right? We have the kings of the earth set themselves against God and against his Messiah, but then it's in that same psalm. Now, therefore, O kings, be wise. Kiss the Son, convert. And so these are the kings, and kings which we find again in at the very end of this book 2 of the Psalter, in Psalm 72, may all kings fall down before him, all nations serve him. So basically it's those who are the heads of humanity, right? They gather and they pass together. They are put together. They're put in unity in their visit of the city of God. That's very impressive. And they themselves see, and you see we have this beauty of the city of God. And this beauty has a message, which is a great one. And the message is going to be spelled out in the following words, which are in bold in your text. Let's hear them in Hebrew.
כן תמהו, נבהלו, נחפזו, רעדה אחזתם שם, חיל כיולדה.
Okay. So we have Ken, right? Thus, and this is really what happens. First, they are amazed. And amazed has also in Hebrew this very positive connotation. They're in front of something that attracts them, that has brought them together, to come together, right? And to look. But this amazement is one like the amazement in front of lightning and thunder, right? It can be immediately mixed with affrighted, dispersed. Nivalu nekparu. It sings in Hebrew, right? And still more, what happens in this encounter with the city of God? There, Sham in Hebrew, trembling takes hold of them. And so they are crossed through and through with trembling. And it's a trembling which has another characteristic. It's like the pangs as of a woman in travail. And so this is the effect that the beautiful city of Jerusalem has before all, right? And we expect pangs as a woman in travail. We have sometimes with respect to defeats that nations live because of their fight against God. We have in Isaiah chapter 13, they were affrighted, spasms, pains will seize them. They will be in anguish like a woman in travail. So something very close to the language here, right? So you see, it's an experience of conversion, where there's admiration, where there's attraction, where there's something of life, pangs of a woman in travail. There's a life-giving, but it's a painful delivery, and which brings out trembling, anguish. And here we are with this gathering of kings. And just, I didn't comment on the word gathering. The verb gathering in Hebrew is the one which is used during the crossing of the desert. Is the gathering of the people when the trumpet is blown. Right? Everybody gathers. It's time to make a new journey, and so gather together. So the kings are sort of living this journey across the desert with all its upheavals, but also fascination and consolations and life-giving. And also I didn't comment on the word, they pass together. This word pass is a very widespread meaning verb. It can be that they pass through Jerusalem, they cross the streets of Jerusalem. But it can also be that they pass an accord with Jerusalem. They become allies in friendship with Jerusalem. Or the same pass can be transgress. They escape from alliance with Jerusalem. Or even they aggress Jerusalem. So there's this whole ambiguity which is provoked by the seeing the beauty of the holy city. And we can say that today, how puzzling the holy city is. On one hand, Jerusalem is so attractive, but at the same time, as you know well from world news, it's a place of incredible strife. And so this is where we are, the beauty of the city. And then this second part of the psalm, right, finishes with a conclusive verse 8. Let's listen to it.
ברוח קדים תשבר אוניות תרשיש.
So the ruach, the spirit of the east, Kadim, shatters the ships of Tarshish. What does that mean? It's precisely that the ships of Tarshish is what transports the wealth of nations. And so the wealth of nations is shattered. So in the beginning of the second part, the kings pass together and see the city of God, right? And so there's this complexity of attraction and of fear, right? And of life-giving, which is underlined in the middle verse. And at the end, right, but where earthly wealth is concentrated, the ruach, the spirit, shatters and submerges the ships holding that earthly wealth. And that's truly what happens in our own experience of conversion. It has all this extraordinary complexity of both new graces and at the same time confrontation with our vices and the evil, right, that is around. So this is the second movement of the psalm. First movement, Zion is beautiful. Second movement, Zion provokes this conversion with all its facets. And then we get to the central explanation about Zion, which is the third part, and which corresponds to the yellow mark in your psalm. And here, let's go again into three parts, because you see, the gem of this psalm is that here we have the third of 5 parts. In other words, this is the center of 5 parts, but each of the 5 parts has also a center. And here, if you really enter into this game of recognizing it, you're entering into the Hebrew form of intelligence, form of thinking, right? Which is the complicated name which we give today is chiasms, right? There's, you can say it in simple, thinking by envelopes towards trying to think so as to touch the inner mystery. And that's what Jews are really in their own culture, in their own language. Precisely, they have a unique art of surrounding the mysteries that we catch sort of what's unspeakable about mysteries, which is quite different from our Western mentality, which is we want to go forward further and further, and with assurance, we're touching more and more the mystery. Whereas the Jewish thought is, rather, let's put the mystery in a cocoon. Let's let it be a jewel, right? And it's not first trying to dominate it. On the contrary, to let its beauty overwhelm us by its secrecy. So here we're in the center. There's the secret part of this whole psalm, and then the secret part is also a center, which we're going to see. But it starts with a first envelope in verse 9, and verse 11 will be the other side of the envelope. So let's listen to verse 9.
כאשר שמענו, כן ראינו, בעיר אדוני צבאות, בעיר אלוהינו, אלוהים יכונניה עד עולם, סלע.
Okay. So it finishes this little first part. It says, Selah means stop here and meditate about this introduction to the central secret of Zion, of the Psalm. And why should we stop? Well, let me first, before we enter into this, let me read the title for this whole central part, which I put under verse 3. Zion's perpetual establishment is the heart of the universe. God's covenant love in his temple is the heart of Zion. So there's a double depth, right? Zion, the heart of the universe, and then the covenant love in the temple is the heart of Zion. And this is what this is about. So verse 9 announces Zion is the heart of the universe, and as we have heard, thus we see in the city of the Lord. So in the second part, it's the kings who saw. It's the same word, right? They see. But now we see. We, the elect, we are also introduced by the beauty of the city of God into new understanding, new depths of mystery. And we call it the city of the Lord of hosts. There is the city of the Lord of armies, the city we saw of God who's a strong defense against all our enemies. And the city of our Eloheinu, which repeats as what we had in verse 1, that God is in the city of our Eloheinu. But what do we have with this new vision that we see? We see Elohim perpetuates her for eternity. This is an unknown affirmation of the whole history of the universe, right? That the city is given an eternal vocation. which transcends history. And so this is very directly a first prophecy in the Psalms of the heavenly Jerusalem. Jerusalem already is, we see in Jerusalem, the heavenly Jerusalem already present. So that's worth taking a time of silence to realize that this beauty, which is prefigured in this psalm, and which, as we said earlier from the just preceding psalms, which echoes the beauty of the Messiah and the beauty of the queen, companion of his. Right? This beauty is one which carries in itself the perpetuity, something of a eternal vocation. And that certainly, for those who have lived in Jerusalem, it's the mystery of Jerusalem, because there are so many reasons historically for Jerusalem to have been wiped out, have been reduced. And here it is today still, right? Standing, and because it holds something of the heavenly Jerusalem, which men in their stupidity cannot erase. So that's the introduction to the central part. But then, what is this secret that makes of Jerusalem a perpetual city? Let's listen to the middle part, which is in bold.
דימינו אלוהים חסדך בקרב היכליך.
We have likened, O Elohim, your covenant love in the midst of your temple. Let's take, there are three parts in the sentence, right? We have likened, diminu, that's really, there's often the translation, we have meditated, but the word in Hebrew is not meditated. We have become alike. We have been entered into the likeness of your covenant love in the midst of your temple, and in the temple life, which is at the heart of Jerusalem. I find this one of the most beautiful expressions of what our whole monastic liturgical life is about. What is a monk's community liturgical life about? It's about likening ourselves to God's covenant love. Like our liturgy makes us like the commandment of loving God with all your soul, all your mind, loving your neighbor as yourself. And that's the heart of the temple and the heart of the church of Jerusalem. And so this psalm defines precisely, right, how today monastic life is the heart of the universal church. Because monastic life is precisely this likening in this temple life which likens us to God's covenant love. I really marvel at this expression, and I don't see much elsewhere such a strong affirmation, and which, when you read it with the Jewish point of view, it's a secret of secrets, which is just at the center of the psalm. Okay, so having said the secret of secrets, Then we go back to the second envelope, right? Let's listen to it. We have
כשמך אלוהים, כן תהילתך על קצווי ארץ.
okay. Keshima, as your name, O Elohim. Thus is your praise unto the ends of the earth. At the top in verse 9, we had the city of God that's where God lives, and that's to which God gives an eternal vocation. At the bottom, verse 11, we have the city of God, right? Is one through which the name of God and the praise of God radiates unto the very ends of the earth to all nations. And so we have at the same time the city of God that extends to eternity above and below, the city of God that extends to the whole universe, to all the world, to all peoples. And at the heart, you heard, we have likened ourselves to your covenant love in the midst of your temple. And this mystery, right, of liturgy in the temple, right, is the heart of hearts. So, after this central part, let's get to the envelope of the central part. Remember what was just before? What was just before was the transformative power of Jerusalem. Just after, you have in verse 12 and following, let's listen to it. The end of verse 11 and verse 12.
צדק מלאה ימיניך. ישמח הר ציון, תגלנה בנות יהודה, למען משפטיך.
So tzedek, care for the right of others, fills your right hand. So that's really mysterious. So first of all, is it the right hand of God, the right hand of the city of God? It's not clear. Let me just read the title for this fourth part to guide us a little. In Zion, we unite to God's universal loving care for his children. And that's really this loving care of God for his children, right? Is held in God's hand, but it's held in the hand of the Jerusalem, and rejoicing Mount Zion. And precisely this care for others. Let's think of Jesus. That's his whole gospel. Caring, coming to care for the sick, the maimed, all those who are in need of salvation. And he brings rejoicing Mount. He brings a joy. The gospel is a message of joy, rejoicing Mount Zion. And the daughters of Judah jubilate, precisely. Those, the daughters of Judah, they're those who participate fully in God's work. And basically, this expression is copied again in Psalm 97. Zion hears and is glad, and the daughters of Judah jubilate because of your judgment, O God. And so the daughters are the soul of the city. And remember that we had the companions of the queen in verse 40, in Psalm 45, who entered with her into the wedding feast of the bride. And precisely, we have this, and these daughters are not necessarily only those of females. It's an expression of those who have this feminine welcome of God's beauty, of God's greatness. And it finishes, because of your divine designs. The Jubilee, because of your divine designs, and your righteousness, your right care for others, right? Which is at the beginning of this part. It's an expression by which comes to us God's whole divine designs of incarnation. What has he come for? All this is possessed in Zion, the Holy Land. And so now we can get to the last part of the psalm, which starts with verse 13, and I read the title for the fifth part. Detailed familiarity with Zion leads all humanity to see God's victory over death. So we have, in this last part, we have Zion is to be well known. We need to become citizens of Zion. And there we participate in its full vocation. So let us listen now to the first part of this verse 13 and the beginning of verse 14.
סובו ציון והקיפוה, ספרו מגדליה, שיתו לבכם לחילה, פסגו ארמנותיה.
Okay, here we have 4 times, right? Or 5 times. 5, 1, turn around the city, circle the city, number towers, set your hearts on the ramparts, count her fortress palaces. Get to know her features in detail. And of course, today, it's such a beautiful event to visit Jerusalem, because we go and visit the Holy Sepulchre, we go and visit the Cenacle, we go and visit the Mount of Olives. We're going from one place to another, numbering her towers, right? Her ramparts, her fortresses, that are giving expression to this extraordinary vocation of Jerusalem. And so we're all called to be these pilgrims that explore the all parts of Jerusalem. And it was wonderful for me to be living there and to be able to go to these different towers and ramparts and at a moment when the tourists are not there. Because when the tourists are there, it's much more difficult to receive this mystery which we're talking about.
You've been there.
For example, I would go at least 3 times. I went in the middle of the night. I went to bathe in the pool of Siloé. Right? So I hope I'm not a blind man. I've had that privilege. But anyway, all these great places, to just be there and have nothing but pray to God and touching, exactly what what Jesus touched. And so, what happens with this touch? Let's listen to the next words, which are in bold.
למען תספרו לדור אחרון.
Because of what you communicate to the generation to come. That's why we visit every detail. Because all these details, all these features of Jerusalem are all orchestrated so that to convey to us what Jerusalem is to communicate to the generation to come. In other words, the mission of the heavenly Jerusalem is what all these different places are all about. And the psalm concludes with what happens to those who enter into this communication with the eternal mission of Jerusalem. Let's listen to it in Hebrew.
כי זה אלוהים אלוהינו עולם ועד, הוא ינהגנו علמות.
Truly, this is Elohim, our Elohim, for eternity and after, right? Truly, this is the eternal God. This city, right, is the presence of the eternal God, our God, for eternity and after. Think of this when you contemplate in a few days, Jesus on the cross, our Elohim for eternity and after. Here he is in the heart of Jerusalem, on the Calvary. The tower, the great tower of Jerusalem. And then there's this absolutely unique line, which as of yet I have not found equivalent in the whole Old Testament. The psalm finishes, he is the one who leads us over death. I'm totally amazed of this prophecy of what is the central message of the Passion and Resurrection, which we're going to celebrate in a few days. He is the one who leads us over death. And that's the God that Jerusalem is supposed to give us to meet. Now, this over death, it's almut. And for those who listen to the Hebrew, they think of something very close. Balmut, that's another verb. It's who does not move. Who brings about what's immovable. And in Hebrew, there's this natural play of words in between death, right, over death, and being immovable. And it's something that's the whole mystery. And so here we have this wonderful Psalm 48. And I would love to spend a long time with you on this psalm and taste each of the 5 parts, taste each of the gems which are in the 5 gems of the 5 parts. And I'll, at the same time, get the dynamic. It's one psalm, which is all about Zion, about the fact that God chooses in his divine designs intermediaries to bring to all mankind the the manifestation of his divine counsel, of his mystery. So we're really at a great, great summit with this psalter and this psalm. I don't know if you have any questions. It's already 8 o'clock, but well, I hope it's a psalm that you can now enjoy and give time for meditating on it, and let it really become a companion of your life with Christ, your life with God. Okay, so let me finish with blessing you. And so, before Easter, right? Because we're going to meet only after the Easter celebrations. I will tell you details in a minute. But let's finish the Psalms with the central part of the Psalm. And we have heard, and thus we see in the city of the Lord of hosts, in the city of our Elohim. O Elohim, we have likened ourselves to your covenant love in the midst of your temple. And so your name and your praise goes to the ends of the earth. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Okay. God bless you all.